welcome to Thinkerneur Sustainable Impact, our inaugural podcast. So previously, we've hosted conversations, topics where we had a number of people, we gather different stakeholders, different individuals, different professions coming in to tackle a particular topic. We've hosted a number of brands, a number of organizations, but I thought maybe it's time to delve into different topics with an individual where we're able to unpack without an audience. Hopefully the audience will join in and enjoy. But it is still under the same foundation, which is this idea that as corporates, we need to play a much more mindful and conscious role in South Africa. I think gone are the days where we can just build brands and hope people will be okay. I think we need to do a simultaneous job of building brands, going after profits. It's not a bad thing to be profitable. It's actually a good thing because then we can plow back. But we have to be mindful in the context in which we are being profitable. I don't think it's a good look if our business are growing, but the surrounding areas look nothing like our bottom line. So all I'm trying to say with this platform is that as corporates, as organizations, we have to be deliberate in ensuring that as our profits grow, the people, the communities, and the environment are well taken care of. So today, I have the absolute pleasure of having you, Ronell, join me for the first ever podcast in terms of the Impact series. So selfishly, I just want to get to know you, and then we can delve into what it is that you do, the wonderful work that you do around sustainability. So I'd love for you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background, where you grew up, before we get into the work bit.
Thank you, Bogosi, and thank you so much for having me here today to join your very first podcast on sustainability, something I hold very passionate to myself. So I'm Ronell Govender, and I grew up in a very close-knit family with parents and two siblings and a very strict household, I must say, in Durban. And I was educated there and did my university and then relocated to Johannesburg to do my articles in auditing. And thereafter, I applied for my first junior internal auditor role at Naspers, which was then called MIH Holdings. Mm-hmm. And the rest is history. I've just grown within the same company till now and very proud of my career journey and just the person that I am.
Amazing. You know, since I'm raising a 10-year-old, I always have a bias, or I'm almost pulled into conversations around the environment. I'm interested in the strict household. How strict was it?
It was favorably strict to the girls and not so much to the boy that was in the household. So strict in the sense that I was indoors most of the time. I wasn't the kid that played on the street. I wasn't playing cricket on the street or soccer in the street. I did not really use public transport. I walked to school and I walked back with my sister. And my dad was very overprotective. You know, I didn't go clubbing until I was maybe 18, 19. Raised very morally through my father, but I had a brother who, you know, being a boy, he was able to play on the streets and he was able to go to the clubs from a young age and start my dad's car and take it out for a drive. I think as we, and I don't know if it's a father-daughter relationship that I don't know. I see it with some parents as well, but it eases as you start earning that trust from your parents and as you grow up, and it gets a lot better. I mean, I do call my dad out on it, but he says, hey, if I wasn't strict on you, would you be who you are today? Fair.
100%. You know, I'm with your dad. I'm actually of the school of thought that especially as fathers, you know, specifically since I'm a father, I think I can speak from that point of view, that our job is not to be liked. I always tell my son that it it won't make sense, and sometimes I think it does for him. But I think once he's older, I think he'll gain a profound appreciation for the strictness that I have in terms of raising him, setting boundaries, and I think that's important. But before we get off that topic, I just want to know: do you think it was fair or unfair if you look at how your brother was raised and you were raised?
I think it's unfair. Okay, but I do understand why. And I think it's also just a concept of elderly or older people that think that boys can take care of themselves better than girls can, or boys are more streetwise than girls are, or, we just need to be a little bit more overprotective of our daughters. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's just judgmental on how you want to raise your children. But sitting back now as an adult, I don't regret it. But if I had a daughter and a son, I would give them equal opportunity to play on the street and enjoy that sort of childhood differently.
Amazing. That is so interesting. I feel like maybe I'm treating my son the way you were raised. I don't know. It's up for debate. But then you got into auditing. Did the entry into auditing had to do something with a strict background in some shape or form? Or maybe there's no correlation, like there's nothing connecting to it?
What a great question. My father actually told me that I should study auditing, and I think that should be the career for you. I wanted to be a lawyer.
Oh, wow.
And, back then in school, it wasn't like today where you had a career assessment done and people would come to the school and then tell you this is engineering, and this is what it's like to be a CA, and this is the points you need for university to be a doctor. Growing up in a typical school, government school, you were told, okay, these are the 3 top, courses that university is offering. You weren't educated much on what you had to do. I wanted to be a lawyer. And even till now, if I could study law, I would do it in my spare time. But my dad, I don't know how he got this vision of, why don't you become an auditor? And I didn't really quite grasp it, but I wanted to do BCom in any way. Okay. So studied BCom and went the auditor route. He would listen to my stories all the time when I was in articles, and he loved them. So yeah, to your point, he was influential in me studying auditing.
Wow, that is interesting. We will get into the education bit. I love the conversation around exposure to certain things. But now I want to know about your current role. You mentioned Naspers in the beginning, and you're still there. So please tell me about your role, maybe even from the moment you got in up until today, just in terms of what it is that you were doing when you entered and what you're doing now and what your current title is.
Absolutely. So I'm at Naspers now for 20 years, and I reached 20 years on 1 March 2006. And
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. A great milestone for me and to inspire others around me on what loyalty actually means to yourself, to a brand, and just being happy about where you are. And for me particularly, when people say, you've been there for so long, you're part of the furniture. No, I'm not part of the furniture. I've never felt that way. Being in a brand where there's so many different business models, from e-commerce to food, to payments, to tech platforms, you're constantly evolving. You're constantly in different business units and business areas, applying your mind to think differently. You're not constantly doing the same thing, and change is not constant, right? That was the one thing that held me close there. The learning just never stopped. The opportunities did not stop. So I started off as a junior auditor. I spent about 8 years in audit. I traveled the world auditing, a lot in Africa as well, and in Europe. Learned how people think, how processes are applied, how do we strategize. And then from there, I decided, okay, I have a solid understanding of auditing. I need to move on to my next opportunity. And I thought about it long and hard. And I said, I'd like to get into compliance, an ethics and compliance role. So I studied to become a certified ethics officer, and I worked in the ethics and compliance team and ran the whistleblower program globally for the group for a few years. And, just one day, as I was sitting at my desk, a pile of paperwork just landed on it. And I was told, Ronell, could you please help and assist with, the electricity bills we have at the Cape Town office and the Johannesburg office? And what does the consumption mean for us? Because we need to start recording our usage. Really had no idea what that meant at that time, because I'm just going over electricity bills and rental agreements and contracts. And I thought, let me do this during my spare time. Little did I realize it was leading me to my new role in sustainability.
Wow.
And I took on that role absolutely confidently, alone in the beginning, and worked with our group auditors and, went through assurance, failed my first two assurances, proud of it to say, learning how to audit non-financial information because everything around us is financial. Over the last hundreds of years, we have IFRS, where we have standards and policies. And being an auditor, all I did was audit financial information. And now we are talking consumption, we're talking liters, we're talking kilowatt hours, megacube metrics. And that really opened up my learning and my understanding of the value of information that doesn't have a price to it, but has a different value to it that impacts our environment that we are living in. And since that day, I've passed all my audits.
Wow.
The last 5 or 6, and really lead in that space. Have a great relationship with the audit companies in South Africa, audit partners. I am able to understand how audit works because of what I was doing. And I was asked recently if I would ever change careers, if I would ever move into something else. And the answer is no. I will stay in sustainability until I can inspire, create advocacy, and do more and learn more for our social and environmental needs.
Wow. That is amazing.
Thank you.
So you mentioned something about failing your assurance. I don't know what that means. I wonder if the audience knows, but maybe it's just me, for the benefit of me. What does that mean?
It's a great question. And this is where real impact starts. So you spoke earlier on about being deliberate. The word I like to use is intention, and both words are very powerful. So it's good that we record data and we have data and we talk about the sustainability work that we're doing in our sustainability statements for everybody to see. But those numbers need independent verification.
Okay.
Those numbers need to be audited. And for the first time, I had an auditor sitting on the other side of me, and I was no longer the auditor.
You're being audited.
I had to be audited. And that is a whole new experience. I'm telling him, he's telling me, and I'm like, this is how you do it. And he's
Taste
like,
of
no,
your own
Ronell.
medicine.
I was getting a taste of my own medicine for the very first time. And that taught me. And now to your question, those numbers, the work that we do, we get assurance on it. Assurance means that the auditors put a stamp on your numbers, on the words, on your statement to say, this is true, this is authentic, we've checked the work, and it is all correct.
Wow.
And only once you have that external validation and verification can I say that you are making real impact, because those numbers are not greenwashing.
Wow.
Those numbers are real. And it took me 2 years to get that data right, because you can do so much with data, right? But it's how you encompass all of this data to be meaningful for you and what makes sense for the business and how you report this.
And it isn't about greenwashing. It is what it is. You're reporting on what is, not what you would like it to be. Is that
Correct.
why it took longer? Because
I think it took longer because we had to do a lot of training and awareness within the organization, businesses, processes, understanding the data. That's what took longer. You can be given an invoice, but if the invoice does not have the information that you require, your data becomes meaningless. So if you have electricity for this room and you get an invoice that says the electricity at this room is costing us 10,000 Rand, but if it doesn't give me the consumption that I need for my reporting and break it down for me and what it means to me, my reporting maturity is not there. So for me, it was more understanding the data, building in the processes in the system, starting training, awareness, making it meaningful for people to report, and then building that empire and that process is what took long. And once we got there, were we able to understand the information that we have?
Wow, that's amazing. In fact, I don't think you were far off what you wanted to study initially. In principle, in theory, it's
Yes.
about building a case, building your argument, convincing the other people on the other
I'd
side.
be a great lawyer, right?
I mean,
I think about it all the time.
great foundation. I mean, it is there. It is there. Now, any regrets in terms of what you wanted to do, what your father recommended or suggested you do, and where you are today?
Absolutely no regrets.
I love that.
I love what I'm doing. It has shaped who I am in my career, my perspective, the way I look at things, what I did at university and carried through to my articles, through internal audits, and where I am today. I talk to you about auditing. I am auditing sustainability information. It is something that none of us as corporates can get rid of. And we're going to have to do this for the journey for us forever. And what I can recommend to corporates is that you should get an auditor on your team, in the sustainability team. It adds a lot of value in understanding your sustainability reporting.
Just to double click on that, two-pronged question. I don't know if it's a question and a statement, but the first question is, what difference will it make? And secondly, is that not a thing? Is it not happening? And why is it not happening?
So I personally feel it makes a difference, because when you have somebody on the other side of the table that understands risks, impacts, and opportunities, you are able to have meaningful conversations with your auditors. When an auditor comes to you and tells you that, you know what, these are your risks, this is what we see for you, remember, they're coming from an outside-inside lens. They don't understand your business like you understand it. And it takes a lot of back and forth to come to a realization or an understanding. Sometimes you almost feel like you also push to a corner that I have to report in this regulation, or I have to do this particular KPI. But no, you don't. You get to choose. It's your business. It's your strategy. But when you understand that, I feel you report better. You understand numbers better. You understand governance and processes. I see it immensely valuable. To your second question, it's such a good question, because I often get asked, what careers belong in a sustainability team? What careers belong in a sustainability team? And my answer to that is, there's no particular career. You need passion, you need drive, and you must want to make meaningful change in environment and society. And I personally believe that you need a variety of experts, from engineers to auditors to finance, lawyers. You could even have marketing and sales, but it's passion that drives what you do.
Wow, I love that. I love that. So now, in terms of your role, I don't want to butcher it or confuse it or swap words around. What is your current title and what do you do?
My current title is Global Sustainability Business Partner. And what I do is, on a daily basis, is look at the businesses that we have. We as a team instill sustainability practices in all of these businesses, instill our methodology to ensure that there is alignment on how we all report. We have a strategy that we roll out, and we communicate, collaborate, co-create with our businesses, bring them together on our journey, and help them to report on their highest level of reporting in terms of sustainability. Now, you must remember as well, we're a listed company. The businesses that we own are not listed, but they are doing amazing work in terms of their reporting and bringing them up and raising them up with this sort of thinking and behavior. It's so rewarding. So that's what we do, is roll out our strategy within the business. And then on the other side, we also do fun things, which is also advocacy work that I like. When you're in a position where you can influence, where you feel you can shift the needle, you need a voice. You have to speak up. You have to bring the right players in and create advocacy. It's important. So that's my day.
Okay, that's interesting. Before we move forward, I want to go back. You mentioned something around which I thought was beautiful, which I think is actually missing in a lot of young people. Applying yourself. I think someone else in your position possibly may have been bored. And I think the question around, don't you feel like furniture now, is quite interesting, in that if you look at the portfolio and the ecosystem of the business, it's almost like, yes, you're inside under one umbrella, but it feels like also you work for multiple companies. I want to link, or maybe from you, to maybe confirm or talk about that experience of going into different companies and or business units and doing this and do to what you are doing currently. It almost feels like a mirror of, you know, what you did then, what you're doing now, or if that was the foundation that set you up for what you did, what you're currently doing now.
Really nice, reflective question, Bogosi. So thank you. I think it set me up for what I'm doing now, to be honest, because younger, when I had started back then in my auditing days and going back then and working within these business units, you know, the first thing you realize is that everybody's different. Every business is different. Strategies are different. Maturity is different. Culturally, they are all different. And culture plays an immensely big factor when you do your work. How do you communicate with different cultures in different countries, different organizations? And for me, my heart is very close to culture and people. I love people. I'm open to different cultures, and that helped me to grow. It helped me to do my work better in understanding people. And when I look at what I do now, that was my foundation. I was able to adapt, able to understand different cultures, people, departments. For example, finance department. Month end, you cannot talk to a finance person. They're absolutely busy. You know, they're trying to wrap up the books, close off their accounts. You learn all of these. They're behavioral patterns. You learn how to work with the different units. You learn when to approach them. You start adapting yourself to the business environment. And then again, I say, adaptation is absolutely important, even for an individual, because someone could easily get bored and say, this is not for me, I can't do it. But whether you leave this and you go to another area, you're somewhat hitting the same issues, the same challenges, but you've got to be very comfortable with yourself, and how you adapt yourself and how you communicate with people is absolutely critical. And, you know, Casper the Friendly Ghost, we used to watch that when we were young.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I was the friendly auditor, but to gain trust in people, they got to trust you. They got to trust that you're doing the right thing for them, that you're supporting them. You're on their side, right? We're the same business. I'm not on a different side from you. And support becomes very important.
That's amazing. You know what? I love and appreciate your, I feel like you have a lot of insight and a lot of meaningful perspective on how to do things and how to operate in that kind of environment. You know, I think it's so refreshing that you make reference to Casper the Friendly Ghost. That's not the energy usually that is spoken about or encouraged in corporate. You know, it's like you have to be stern, you have to be firm, you have to be, and I think you offer a lot of insightful perspective that is really useful. And I also like what you prioritize and what you care about. You speak about people, you speak about culture. It's all of these things that generally they're not in the textbook. It's things that we have to pick up along the way, you know. But I love that that is kind of like your focus. And I think there is a statement, I don't want to butcher it. There's a statement that you have. I'm trying to find it so that I don't butcher it. On your LinkedIn, you have a quote, and I think it sort of summarizes, in a way, also your intentions and who you are. And I usually like approaching things in, I always say, you have to have a lens through which you look at things. You have to have a point of view through which you do things. I think It doesn't matter what it is, whatever it is for yours. And when I see that, I see it as a lens that you look at things or you look through things. And it says, your LinkedIn billboard, it says, inspiring sustainable change, delivering measurable results. Do you want to unpack that a little bit and what that means?
Yeah. So inspiring sustainable change, delivering measurable results is Ronell Govender. That's who I am. That speaks to me and how I conduct myself within my job every day. And when we talk about inspiring sustainable change, it's about the courage you take as an individual to make that change, even when you're the only one in the room believing that something's not right or that we should shift in that direction, even when it means you're not being popular, is how you inspire that change. Me being here today with Bogosi and talking my journey, I want to inspire young people to become sustainability enthusiasts like myself. And when we talk about delivering measurable results, I go back to what I said earlier when you asked me about assurance. Everything that we need to do needs to be with intent. And when I say that I've impacted so many lives or we've reduced reduction by so much, it needs to be measurable, it needs to be authenticated, and it needs to be the facts. That's when you see real impact and real change.
I love that. I love that. Two words stick out. I think you used the word encourage. That for me speaks to being intentional. Now, with that lens, I want to speak about the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Not to go deep into it, but, and I don't know if we have the answers, but because of the first part of your point of view, which is inspiring sustainable change, and I think that's what the UN Sustainable Goals are trying to do. What I cannot fathom, or it's difficult for me to comprehend, is with all the smartest people that we have, with all the incredible leaders in the world that we have, with all the great intention that we have in the world, why are they so difficult to achieve? We don't have to have the answers, but I think it's just an interesting conversation or topic to tackle. When I think about, I mean, even if you look at a UN level, or even if you look at inside organizations, and if you look at people who are doing research, writing papers, and there's so much good thinking and ideas, but for some reason, the needle is not moving across the 17 goals. In general, why are we not able to achieve that change? Or if it's happening, it's so gradual, it's almost non-existent. Why is that?
Thank you for the question. Difficult one. And I think we all have this question in our minds. You know, are we shifting anything? Why aren't things moving? Are we doing the right thing? And we look at the Sustainable Development Goals, and they mean well. They all do, and we all try to measure against these goals. But also, if we just park the SDGs and we talk about frameworks, there's many frameworks that are out there, so many, the whole alphabet soup in sustainability. And you look at all of them, and then to your point, what is meaningful? What does meaningfulness mean to us? And, you know, I'm going to be very open and honest, and this is just my opinion, is that are we measuring them correctly? So we have metrics and we have frameworks and legislation telling us this is what we need to do. And we're all rambling and scrambling and we're trying to get all of this right within our work zone areas. But then the question is, if we're doing it, are we measuring it correctly? That's what I feel. Because I feel once you start measuring them, then only can you see the impact, then only can you see what do I do with that set of results. And when they are being measured and those results come out, what do we do with it after that? Where does it go? Are we working on it year on year? For example, on reduction strategies, energy efficiency reductions. If you're looking at the social impact side, how can we partner more to get more children educated in certain areas? Are we pivoting in the right way? So it's a lot to do with the start and the foundation. Yes, it's good. We have it all there. The frameworks are there. But what value is a framework if you're not implementing it stringently, intentfully, deliberately, with the outcome and the desire to do something about it?
Wow. Do you think all of these things are actually standing in the way of what should be done? The reason I say this is that in my strategy discipline, I always find that sometimes the frameworks and the IP stuff that is supposed to be enabling the thinking is actually standing in the way. I remember years back, I was working at this agency. They had this framework where you had to fill in these 5 blocks. I spent more time trying to make the 5 blocks make sense versus actually thinking, as in, what is the tension? What are people feeling? What do people, what are they liking? What makes them shift or move? Or what is it that we're doing in the organization that we shouldn't be doing? So instead of asking critical questions that help us clarify certain things, I was focused on this model. It's like, oh, this part needs to speak to this part. Half the time, I wasn't thinking. I was just trying to fill in the gaps. Now, this is my point of view to say perhaps we are overthinking, and maybe there's obviously good reason and intent in having these things in place, but are we overcomplicating things as opposed to looking at the problem and then just asking ourselves, what do we need to do, or what can we do to solve this problem? And then maybe the frameworks help us tell the story. I don't know.
I do, to your first question, I do believe some can be roadblocks because they become so difficult to report, and some don't have leeway for complex business types. And some are cookie cutter approach frameworks that say you have to do it in this particular guidance and order, and there's no way out of communicating through it. And it can pose a challenge. It really can pose a challenge. And, but we all got to start somewhere, right? I think what people grapple with is the starting point. What is that starting point? What framework do I choose to start off with? Because you got to choose something and start. We can't sit back and say, we're not going to do anything about it, or think for the longest time we want to do something, but I'm not sure which framework, and we grappled this for years and years and years. No, you got to choose a framework and you got to use it. There's lots. There's GRI in South Africa, which has long been used. In South Africa now we have the GSE guidelines that are out for sustainability that I think are really nice. Pick one, report on it, choose the KPIs you want to report on that makes sense to your business, your environment, your strategy. And like I said, there's nothing wrong with failure. You grow through failure. We are not saying you choose the KPI and you got to win all the time. It's not about winning, but it's about how you are impacting and reducing. And you as a citizen, as a business, what is your corporate responsibility? Ask yourself that. What is your corporate responsibility? And how do I work towards that? But the point is, you gotta start somewhere. And in all of it, the underlining of all of it is your governance, your ethics, your integrity. Because once you have those 3 in place, then you are able to tell a sustainability story that creates your impact.
I love the last 2 points around, and I think it's a beautiful point that it's okay to fail. Obviously, we don't aim, to fail. And I think particularly if we're trying to do different things, new things, because we haven't done them before, we might not get them right initially, which then speaks to this idea of governance and ethics. And, I don't know if there's a tension between trying to make sure that things are perfect which maybe then interferes with the concept of governance.
I think maybe, let me tweak what you said. Let's change perfect to compliance. Are we trying to tick more of a compliance box rather than trying to aim for what's impactful? And for the longest time, sustainability is seen as a side event. Sustainability is done because we have to do it and we need to tick that box. It's not seen as part of the business strategy and part of the business decision-making process and part of long-term value growth. And I think once we start seeing that, then we start seeing the drive and the value of it. But for most, it is ticking that box of compliance. Let me just get it done.
How do we transition from compliance to this is actually core strategy? Like it is a way of thinking and doing things in enabling us to achieve our goals.
Absolutely. That is the mindset shift, the mindset shift that needs to happen, crucially. Whether it takes time to start seeing the change and to start seeing the value, because it will take time, we need the mindset change to happen. We need sustainability to be embedded within decision-making processes. Another thing through my experience is you have a sustainability team in a company. It is not the job of the sustainability team to run sustainability in the business.
Okay, unpack that. What does that mean?
Sustainability belongs to all of us in the business, whether you're in the tax team, the shares team, the finance team, the HR team. We should all embed sustainability values in what we are doing in our business practices to see the holistic result. And yes, you get a sustainability team that will drive a strategy and guide you towards the reporting, the frameworks, but it is a shared responsibility. And that's what affects your decision-making processes. Even at a board level, you need sustainability experts, even at a board level, to understand what sustainability means to organizations and companies. Even board members should be educated on what sustainability is. They should go through trainings and learnings as well to understand what it means for a business.
100%. I think absolutely spot on. What you're saying captures the sentiment that was put forward in one of the Impact Series events where we had a presentation from Deloitte where the topic was around how do you build sustainability as an inside-out approach, not a departmental thing, but it's literally from the entire organization and build that ripple effect into the exterior. Now, I want to talk about impact and corporate South Africa as a whole. But I want to talk about it from, obviously there was a way we did business, pre-sustainability. Business was business, we're making money, we're growing, we have aspirations, we have ambitions. I think with the idea of sustainability being conscious, being deliberate, being mindful, it almost says we need to think about things differently as an organization. What do you think should corporate South Africa be doing collectively? And I don't know if it's a collective corporate initiative. I think also what I'm trying to get at is there a way of thinking that we all agree on as corporate South Africa, that we, specifically South Africa, never mind the globe, maybe even, let's not even think about the SDGs, but as corporate South Africa, are we being inspired by a single idea, or are we all just finding our niche in trying to do something and have impact?
So I think I hear where you're going at, and it's things that, we grapple with as corporates, especially if you're a global corporate, a global listed corporate
That
where
adds a complexity to
a
it.
lot of complexity, because now you're dealing with European legislation, you're dealing with rules, regulations, frameworks from the global north that is now impacting us on the global south. And we are not maturely ready for that sort of reporting. We haven't yet risen to that sort of level. Our companies are differently managed, resources are different, infrastructure is different, there's parity differences. But I think that's what we generally struggle with if you're a global company, is adopting those global north policies into our region. And they're giving us, timelines to get ready to report on certain things. And it puts a lot of pressure on us and how we start building this in our environment. So that's one complexity that we need to deal with. Being a global south company, or being based in the global south, it's an ongoing challenge for us. And then secondly, just looking locally at South Africa, we don't have a framework legislation. There is nothing that says you got to do this particular framework and report on sustainability. There's so many frameworks. And whether you talk about a collective or companies coming together and what can we do together, that's already happening. And I think we do it beautifully as a country. I think we're doing wonderful work as a country in terms of sustainability. The big players that are out there on their sustainability statements, the work that they are doing, it must be recognized. There is things happening, and I think there's lots of coalitions being created, bodies, committees, more than ever right now. There's so many mushrooming up, and you could join any one of them to start understanding these needs from a South African perspective. But then again, we're also bound by a lot of legislation in our own country. If you look at EVs, and that's a topic I'd like to park, but I've been so involved in it, and something we want to drive forward and create advocacy on, but there's only so much we can do. And when government doesn't come to the party to help us on legislating some of the needs as people that we need in our country, what do we do, Bogosi? What do we do? Then do corporates now rise up to that? Society rises up to that. How can we change? And South Africans are generally resilient people by nature. We are born to be resilient. If you look at the energy crisis that we had for all of these years, we've survived. We've survived all the load shedding. Why? Because we make a plan. That's what we say. And, from those little UPS devices to generators to now solar, we make a plan around it. So I think we do come together when we have to, as a community, as a nation. I'm so proud of us as a nation. But I do think, I'm just going to add a little spin here. The next thing we need to watch out for is water. And this has been a long coming issue. And, again, it's this reactive approach we constantly take, and it's never proactive, and it's never planned. And it's not something that, we can be proud of to say we've planned for this particular outreach, or, this is how we're going to tackle the situation. This is how we're going to go forward. We're actually being very reactive at the moment. We're actually taking steps back instead of running forward. And that's going to be our new challenge in the country that we're going to be looking forward to.
Amazing. I think you speak to this tension between private and public partnership, collaboration. When you from a corporate side ask, what can we do? I can only imagine an individual who's not tied to any organization, how helpless, they must feel. But then what do you think should be corporate's role in maybe feeling less defeated, but is there something that we can put together where, it's tricky, in that then there are issues of corporates driving their own agendas, but if private sector has resources and they're trying to push the country forward, how do we get corporate South Africa to have more influence on policy. That is obviously right for the majority and not just for a few. Where there's good intent, how do we get to that place where making efforts, where policy changes or legislature is put into place to allow for the initiatives that you're trying to put in? Because there's the profit aspect, but I think there's the greater good aspect as well to it.
Such a difficult question. I think we all, we all are going through this because we want the positive change, but we can't do it without government. We need partnership with government. They mean well. They mean well in what they're doing. We need to understand it. At the same time, we need to embrace what we are doing. And we do need that support. We cannot exclude one and do the other. It needs to be a very collaborative conversation. I think how corporates can help is come together and create coalitions, create scenarios, create learnings that we can produce to say, if this particular country in Africa is doing it this way and it works, why can't we learn from those learnings? And I think that's what we need to do as a country, is look at outside and learn and bring it in and implement it. And if we fail, it's okay. We failed, but we tried. But we need to learn from others. We need to be open to the learnings.
Amazing. Amazing. I love that. Do you, as we get close to the end, sadly, the end of our conversation, I'm having so much fun. Are there any organizations, brands, corporates, whatever, that you look at and you're like, these guys are at the forefront? They pushing boundaries. There's so much innovation, and through the lens of sustainability, I think what sustainability is calling on us to do is to do things differently, is to be more mindful. If we were using natural resources to produce stuff and whatever, how can we be more innovative so that we are not just consuming and without any cycling back to, are there any companies that stand out for you that are pushing the boundaries and possibly are like the I don't want to say the blueprint, but we can look at them and be like
proud.
Yeah.
So there are a few companies, not going to name them,
Okay.
but that I'm proud of, that are doing wonderful work in South Africa, big branded companies that are, taking on sustainability, building it into their strategy and what does it mean for them. And you see the wonderful work that they're doing. You look at their annual financial statements, you read their sustainability statements, and you see who those big players are. And when I read them, the first thing comes to mind for me is, how can I partner with them to get wider leverage? Who is leading in energy that we can do work, on that angle, or on the social side that taps education or skills development? There are much happening in South Africa, and there are big players bringing this value home and doing wonderful, great work about it. And even if you're on LinkedIn and you read the posts of our own leaders in South Africa, from the biggest banks that operate in the country, leaders are doing wonderful work. They're posting about sustainability. It's becoming a topic on the agenda. They are raising and growing sustainable finance and sustainable departments that tackle these causes and roots to unlock this opportunity for us. So I do see it. I honestly do see it, and I learn from it, and it creates a lot of value for us, for partnerships.
Amazing. 2 last questions or conversation points. I want to end with you talking about the amazing work and innovative stuff that you're doing in your organization. But before that, I want to talk about education. So I've got a initiative that I recently launched, which is called TEGS, TEGS, which stands for the Education and Graduates Summit. The intention of it is to have a self-reflective moment at our education pipeline and value chain as a whole. The vision is to make South Africa's education a global benchmark. We are incredible at other things. If you look at sporting, entertainment, even at an intellectual level, we have individuals who are doing amazingly, in the country or globally, who come from the country. And I think education is one of the areas that we can be intentional about in terms of how it impacts the country. I think, some people say, and I say this intentionally, where I say it needs an overhaul. And I think there's something to be said about intentionally overhauling. Currently, I think what we're doing, there's a lot of investment in education. And unfortunately, it is siloed. So you have people who specialize in ECD. That's all they focused on, putting money into ECD, trying to improve ECD. And then you have other people who might focus in the primary school phase. They putting money in there, they doing a lot of things. And then there are people who are investing in high school. They've got programs, even brands, financial institutions focusing on high school. And then there's the tertiary level where individuals, organizations, they're like, okay, how can we make this thing better? What we're trying to do is to say, instead of working in isolation, and maybe let's step back and then look at this entire thing holistically. Instead of building an education system that takes you from one grade to the next, what we're trying to do is to look at the quality of development with every year that passes. The simple logic is you should surely be better off or be in a better space than you were a year before. And not just, I suppose maybe this may apply to, when we talk about ticking boxes, compliance, I think there's a similar thing where we're moving from grade to grade, we're going all the way, but are young people psychologically, mentally, intellectually becoming better? So what we're trying to do is to say, maybe we need to have a relook at the entire education system and actually make sure that it works. I'll give you a couple of reasons. So I failed grade 11. And it wasn't because of lack of, capability, but there's something that happened which made me realize that I possibly could have been ahead of my time, but it's all coming back together now. Where when you get to grade 11, conversations around where you're going to study, what, those intensify. For me, the way I saw it, people are like, yeah, you need to know what you're going to study, and then when you look at what you study, it's like 3, 4, 5 more years, depending on what you're studying. For me, when I looked at it, I was like, wait, so I still need to finish my grade 11, grade 12, and then still do an additional 3, 4, 5, 6 years. They're like, yeah, I'm like, wait. For me, that did not make sense. The question for me was, what are we doing in the 12 to 15 years in basic education that is not equipping me with skills or tools to be useful in the economy? Most matriculants, they cannot get a job. They can't. So I'm like, what are we doing in the 12 years that I still need an additional 5 years? Even then, post-tertiary, you have young people standing at traffic lights, asking for jobs. My question is, what are we doing in the education system that does not equip and empower young people? My thinking is, if I've gone through tertiary education, I should be able to think and solve problems. But if I go through tertiary education, paid so much money, and then stand on the side of the road to beg for a job, that does not make sense. I don't care how you look at it. There might be, I don't think there's a reason for that. So we say, we need to relook this entire thing so that it actually works. I think if you are educated, you should be at a place where you're looking at your surroundings and be like, oh, that's a problem, then it's fixing. I've been educated. Therefore, I think I have the skills or the tools. Even if I don't have the tools, I can think to organize whatever is required, even in my community or wherever I'm at. What is your view? Because my view is that if we are able to design an education system that actually works for the country, I think we'll be able to solve some of the key issues. But I think in order to do that, as a country, we actually need a vision and a purpose that is articulated for where we want to be as a country. In painting this vision of where we want to be as a country, then we design an education system that allows us to get there. I think those two need to speak to each other.
Agree.
What do we want to achieve? And then the question of how do we get there? Then we use the education system to help us get there. At the moment, I know there's a lot of thinking, strategy that's happening, but I don't think it's designed with the intention to help us achieve something or get to something. And I liked what you said around a lot of corporates and organizations doing something in education. What are some of your initiatives and work around education?
Thank you. Thank you for unpacking that, and well done on Tex. I think that is going to go a long way. You have a vision for it, and it's going to be extremely powerful on how you execute that vision with your partnerships, because we need a key focus on education in South Africa. It is a very sad reality, and as I listen to you speak, a lot resonates in me for our young people in our country, because Africa does have the youngest youth population in the world, and we need to give them the best education possible so that they can be blooming into the individuals we want to see them to and in job spaces. And currently, that's a real big issue for our country. I think, there's many factors that add to these complexities, Bogosi, from the infrastructure of the school, where the school is located, to running water in the school, facilities in the school, to the training of the teachers, educating teachers to be specialists in subjects, and then, going down to the students and teaching our young people basic reading, writing from a young age, and then being deliberate and intentional about what that strategy actually means for us. So absolutely resonates with everything you've said. From an educational perspective on what we do and what corporates are doing, and you're right, depending on your business and where you want to focus your strategy, some would be in tertiary, others would be, school level, others would be out of, school, under 30, helping communities. It depends. And I think in any angle that you're taking it from, you're impacting a life. And it's still such a wonderful thing, and it's a good thing. But I hear you where you are saying, we need a vision. We need a vision, a stronger, bigger vision on where we want to get to. And what is that vision? Do we want a higher matric pass rate? Do we want a higher university pass rate? Do we want a higher employment pass rate? Those are different buckets we look into. But some of the stuff we do on our side in terms of education, and globally around the world, education is a focus for us. We educate on different aspects, from skills development, digital upskilling, social empowerment, going into our communities through the platforms that we have, creating innovative solutions for our customers in terms of technology, entrepreneurship, and offering courses to people to explore and to expand themselves. And one of the initiatives we run is digital upskilling, where we, look into young people, educate them through their university years, and then from there, once they qualify, get them a job into a corporate. We have a program that we currently do internally, and that works really well because you actually see the student grow in that area. But I understand that that's at a certain point. And we're not going down deeper. And I'd love to unlock that with you in future, if I can leave it there, and how we can unpack that as a country and as a community for our young people.
Amazing, amazing. With that, we will be hosting a workshop in May. And part of the workshop is to bring different stakeholders to come in to collaborate. So the idea is for all stakeholders working in different parts of their speciality, and for us to look at the entire value chain to say, how do we design it in such a way that ECD speaks to primary, primary speaks to high school, and high school speaks to tertiary, and tertiary actually speaks to the world of work. What we're finding, and speaking to a lot of teachers and including lecturers, it blows my mind where even lecturers at tertiary level, they end up having to do remedial work. So there's the layer of the coursework, the content, the degree, the modules that they have to do. Underneath that, they still have to give young people skills in terms of how do you put together a research, like just putting together a document. They use, so the significance of collaborating means high school or tertiary institution should be speaking to high school and say, listen, this is what we expect. When a person is at this level, this is what they should be able to do. And therefore, in high school, they should be preparing them to go into the next phase. What is currently happening is that there are gaps. Everybody's doing their own thing. Anyway, so the workshop is designed to then say, what do we need to do to achieve that goal?
Yeah.
And then what we're trying to do also is not to be a gathering of conversations. Linked to the workshop is the summit. Now, the summit, which leads me to my next question, but in terms of education, we're calling it the most progressive education summit, where it is about ideas and solutions. I think the objective is to expose ourselves to different ways of teaching and learning. What are the ideas? What ideas do we need to push our education forward? There's a gentleman, his name is Thulani Sibiya. He's overall the best teacher in the country. He teaches math, and the technique he uses is music.
Oh,
so
wow.
he teaches math through music. It is the most intuitive, obvious thing. When I'm in the car with my son, when there's a new song, after 3 listens, he starts singing along. He catches it, he gets it. So when I heard about what Tulani's doing with maths, and like they sing, I'm like, that is the most basic, obvious, but genius thing.
Absolutely.
So the summit is intended to help us uncover those kinds of things. It's like, what do we need to do? What can we do?
Yeah.
Now, to close off, I want to know some of the most exciting stuff that you guys are doing in closing.
We're doing a lot of exciting things. So on the energy side, if you're looking at environment, we are looking into energy reduction, cost-saving initiatives within our businesses, mapping our footprint, seeing where, we can start reducing. So we start off at home with the simple things. We then look into the social aspect, where we are talking about lives that we can impact through initiatives, whether it's in the township, in the economies. How can we raise young people, teach them to be local entrepreneurs, give them the skills, the education. We also have a driver program where we are looking at young people getting onto bikes. South Africa doesn't have a bike culture, but we are trying to get, young people inspired to ride bikes. It creates income. It's a stepping stone for a better life, for bigger things to come. We invest a lot in advocacy that I tried to tell you about. And one of the things we're looking into now in South Africa is electric vehicles, and how can we start transitioning this and moving the needle on EVs from a consumer perspective, but also from an individual what incentives are there for me to transition into an EV? And we can't do this alone. So to your point earlier on, it's collaboration, co-creation with government, private companies, NGOs, etc., on how we can start doing this. Globally, a lot of work is being done, beautiful work in communities on how we're upskilling digitally. If you look at our payments platform business, it's no more brick and mortar business where you got to go in physically to a bank. This can be done now digitally. It's providing training to people in communities on how they can do this, work efficiently. So there's a multifaceted work streams that we work on, but I do believe we can do so much more. I do believe we can inspire so much more, and we are on that journey. And again, we can't do it alone. We have to collaborate.
Amazing. This has been absolutely beautiful.
Thank you.
As you're talking, in fact, from the first 5 minutes we started talking, I'm already thinking episode 2 with you, or 3, or maybe it's episode 10 or whatever. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time, and I love the work that you guys are doing. I think this has been an absolutely amazing advertorial for Naspers. I think, when you speak about a 20-year tenure, it's like, oh no, it's in the olden days. Today we move around or whatever. But I think because of the portfolio and the ecosystem and the work that you're doing, why would you want to leave? It's amazing. And I also love the way you're thinking, your approach to work.
Thank
I think
you.
it's beautiful. It's all of these things that we are never taught. The same way, there's so many things that we are not taught in school. In fact, I always say, recently now, with the work that I'm doing in education, I realized that, the thing we call adulting is everything we were never taught in school, which is what we should be taught. I don't think we should be surprised when we get older.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure for me to be here today with you, Bogosi, and thank you for the opportunity to have Ronell share her story, and hopefully it will inspire others. And I look forward to continuing this work in my career path and inspiring and creating, pathways for young people. It's very close to my heart. And I believe we are doing wonderful work in South Africa, and we should continue this.
I'm happy. I'm so inspired. Thank you.
Thank you.
This was an incredible episode. I couldn't have asked for a better guest to start the inaugural podcast. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you will watch more episodes. This was myself, Bogosi, and Ronell on the Thinkerneur Sustainable Impact platform through our Impact Series podcast. Thank you for watching.
Thank you.